Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tuned podcast. The goal of the show is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. Now, today's guest is Christian Boucousis. Christian is an established entrepreneur, business owner, and an executive leadership and performance coach. At the age of 19, Christian was recruited into the Royal Australian Air Force as a pilot and completed over 11 years as an elite fighter pilot, one of only 400 trained over 38 years period. Christian also heads the Australian arm of an organization called Afterburn, a team of men and women who had served as a fighter pilot, the custodians of the fighter pilot way, also called flawless execution. Upon participation in his first Afterburn event, Christian had envisioned the skill he had learned and develop and apply as a fighter pilot were the fundamental skills that led him to his success. So, Christian, thank you so much for joining me today. Let's check in and see how you're doing.
Cheers, Kong. Thanks a lot, mate. Lovely to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I love your background, and I wanted to visit more. If you could tell us, how did you get started in this work? Well, first of all, how did you get started joining the military, and then what led you to do the work that you do today?
Yeah, I think the story starts really with just being a weird kid. My whole childhood was focused on airplanes, flying. I mean, I did obviously have a desire to be in the military and serve, and it seemed to me like a pretty good thing to do. But predominantly for me, being a pilot was what I wanted to do, and most importantly, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I thought, well, if you want to be a pilot in the most challenging environment and the best airplanes you can fly, that's what I want to do. And it all started, I think, at an air show. It's hard to tell when you have this sort of ingrained sense of purpose and you have this vision for what you want to be, and it starts when you're so young. You can't really put your finger on it. So I don't know whether I'm making this memory up or not. I know it actually happened, but whether this was the trigger, I don't know. And it was at an air show when I was very young, sort of 5 or 6, and I was watching all the jets fly past. And back in those days, it was in the 80s, there were far less rules than there are today. And it was just a massive cowboy event where airplanes are flying barely off the ground. It was fast. It was furious, almost at the speed of sound. There was a lot going on, and it was a bit of a sensory overload for me. And I think what happened is I spent the whole day out there. I could smell the aviation fuel, see the pilots. Everything about it just seemed to be, wow. It was like a flying circus. I didn't have any context around, that these were war machines or what war was. Obviously, I was just a kid. But the visceral experience of it all was amazing. And there was one event that occurred there, which was kind of towards the end of the show, they came over the loudspeakers and they're saying, someone, you've parked your vehicle illegally. No one can get out of the car park. And you could hear this helicopter coming off in the distance and saying, so we've had to remove your car. This helicopter comes out from sort of behind the airfield, and as it comes over, it's got this car hanging underneath it. And when I was looking at the car, I was like, that's Dad's car. Like, that's the car we drove out in. So I'm sitting there as this young kid going, oh my gosh, what's Dad? What did you do? You parked the car in the wrong spot. And as it's coming across in the helicopter, I'm like, what are we going to do? And they're like, can someone please come to the announcer's desk? We need you to collect your car. And then the helicopter just drops it, and it goes, bam! And this car just kind of explodes in front of everyone on the airfield. And I'm like wide-eyed going, what, Dad? You've just dropped the car. How are we going to get home? I'm freaking out. And then looking back, and Dad's obviously laughing, and I don't get it. He's like, it's not my car. No, it's just a joke, son. And I'm like, nah, I don't believe it. He's just trying to make me feel better. And we're walking back to the car, and I'm like, oh, what's going to happen? And then sure enough, Dad's car was there. And I was like, oh, wow, this doesn't compute. And I think, just completely overwhelmed at that point of the day. Then the cherry on top of the whole story was, as we were driving home on the freeway, I could hear it was these old Iroquois, old world Vietnam era choppers, and they're like really kind of loud, whacking the air. And I could just hear this helicopter behind us, and it was just getting louder and louder and louder. And I'm down in the wheel in the foot where the feet sit in the back seat. I'm looking back and I'm terrified, thinking that there's helicopters. Yeah, obviously all it does is come and pick up white cars like Dad. You know, in my mind, that's all this helicopter did, and we're going to get dropped down. And turned away and went off, and from there I just had this passion for aviation. I read hundreds of books about fighter pilots all through World War One, World War Two. Had a fascination with everything that they did. Had posters of airplanes all over my wall, and I wasn't particularly academic. And only very recently I was diagnosed with adult ADHD, and I think for me, in those days with books, there weren't computer games, there wasn't any smartphones. So for me, that was a world I could just get lost in, reading over and over again, and it just reinforced this passion to fly. So you can sort of start flying when you're about 15 years of age. Like you can fly whenever you want, but kind of you can start to log the hours and stuff, I think about 15. So I started just flying a little bit. I started to, after school, I would go to like our community college where you could study theory of flying and aviation. And I started doing my theory subjects, and I just started to fly. And I was really bad at school. Again, in hindsight, it was an ADHD thing. And being not great at school and having this passion to fly made me do the extra yards that I had to do to study. So I ended up I did my final year of school, and in Australia you're allowed to do it again. It's called repeating. So I did my second year of school, and and obviously there's a bit of a stigma attached with that you're a bit of a dummy because you can't get out of school the first time. And I went through, and I had to. The first time I went around, my marks weren't where they needed to be, so I went back again, started to build up my marks to just barely get into the Air Force. And that's it, mate. That's kind of the story of my life. I'm the guy that just makes it. I just made it academically. I rode in the first 8 at my school, and I was the 8th. Well, I don't know, but I reckon I was the 8th guy selected. I played first 6 volleyball. I reckon I was the 6th guy selected. Track and field, I was the last guy to be on there. So I like to think of myself as the underachiever of overachievers. And I think for me, because I struggle academically, and anything to do with sort of writing is really hard for me. So that going through that process was really just hard work, just hard work. And that to me, as I got older and I started to understand the concept of purpose and stuff, which you don't, in your teens and 20s, you've got no idea about purpose. You're just surviving, right? But in hindsight, I look at that, and that was such a huge sense of purpose for me. To be a fighter pilot was absolutely everything, and it drove all of my thoughts, all of my actions. Everything about me was embodied in that. And even when I go to my school reunions, all my mates still remember, oh, you're the pilot guy. That was just everything about me, and my identity was that. And then that just flowed on through being a fighter pilot, wanting to be the best fighter pilot, and then going through a process my whole life where I'm fortunate to understand, I think, intrinsically, that you must have something big and purposeful to line yourself up to, because otherwise it's just kind of hard to get up in the morning and stay motivated, and life becomes kind of grey. So there you go, mate. How's that for a short story on how did I start out? But you weren't expecting that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you just went from 0 to like 200 miles per hour. That's that's what I was expecting. I mean, from someone who is a former pilot. That's great. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story and putting some color and richness to it. Did you always thought of yourself as a pilot, or was it something that was instilled in you?
No, it was just me. I didn't my I have no. I had an uncle two uncles for helicopter pilots, and subsequently my cousin became a Qantas pilot as well. There was a little bit of aviation in the family, but they were great because they mentored me and allowed me to come and be around aviation when I was a kid. But the the thought and the idea was just came into my mind from somewhere, and I think again, as I move forward now and coach people, I kind of reinforce the importance of experience. I think that airshow experience landed a memory that was really accessible, and purpose needs an experience. Day to day, grinding it out, doing stuff doesn't need an experience, and you don't need to do stuff every day to like the carrot and the stick to get people motivated. You got to let people have that ability and an opportunity to motivate themselves. But it's only going to happen if they believe in what you're doing as a leader, and what you're doing collectively is something worth fighting for. And that's the business I first went into in the Middle East, not the Middle East, but in Afghanistan and subsequently the Middle East, was working around a business model that was to deliver humanitarian services and secure and safe environments for people in a way that was the right way. It was altruistic, that looked after people, that didn't take advantage of people, because in those parts of the world, unlike the developed world, there's a lot of exploitation and a lot goes on there that probably wouldn't sit comfortably with us, and can't be judgmental of that. That's just the way it is. But we just made a commitment to everything we did there must be bigger, better, and safer. And people got on board with that. If that's the ethos and the culture of business and who you are, that enables people to get on board on that journey. So purpose is just, it's everything. And I think it's a challenge for people that don't have it. And then there's another box to unpack here, which is sometimes people just don't have that sense of purpose and drive. But equally, there's a lot of, you can still have happiness without that. And you can have happiness being part of someone else's purpose. It depends where you sit in the spectrum of selflessness, or being a type alpha, or someone that's more comfortable being a kingmaker rather than a king. So purpose is an interesting one to unpack. And I think if you're the type of person that doesn't necessarily feel that sense of purpose, don't let it get you down. Don't let it be something that creates a negative effect for you. Just keep living life, and something will happen, something will hit you, and all of a sudden you'll feel like I need to do something about it. And there's lots of great causes out there, and I think that's why humanitarian organizations and charity organizations, are so important, because some people, they might work for a living, but their purpose is saving animals, or helping children, or helping homeless people, or helping people with mental health. Like, there's so much purpose to have in life there. And I think purpose really equals service. I think if you've got a service mindset, you will feel like you have a purpose in life. If you make everything about you, you're not necessarily going to connect with purpose.
I love that what I'm understanding from you is that service usually leads to impact, and impact is an aspect of addressing one's purpose. I think at the end of the day, for me, purpose is really about being of service to others. And so when you say that, we should take some time to, let's say, participate by getting involved with charitable organizations that are trying to do good in the world, and that's a service to people. I mean, that's a large chunk of what purpose, I think, what purpose is being of service in that impact. Now,
you think about it, Kong. When we feel bad, or when we feel frustrated, we feel that because we feel like something's been done to us, right? It's our ego. Every time we don't feel great, it feels like we're not living up to someone's expectations or our own expectations. We're not getting what we believe we deserve. All of these, all the times we feel bad about ourselves, it's because we're always thinking in the context of us. If you flip that around and you always think about others, or you're always helping others, it's very rare that someone feels bad when they help someone. It's almost impossible. So that's another little, and I learned this late in life, because I had a very, my 20s was very much about me and my success, because I didn't have awareness of any of this. And when I was in my 30s, I met someone that introduced me to this, a bit of a spiritual healer, who introduced me to this concept of ego. And anytime you're using the word I when you're reflecting on something, or that immediately is a circuit break for me to stop thinking that way. Like if I go, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have got more money, or I got ripped off, or whatever, you detach yourself from the situation, and think of it in terms of, well, what if you had looked at yourself as just a person, not you? If you're giving advice to someone else as a coach, what would you say to them? So I think when you look at purpose and selflessness, it also equals happiness. And it's not hard. Like it's just not hard. It's just we're not conditioned to be that way. We're selfless in some respects to to our families, but a lot of the time we just spend thinking about ourselves and what we deserve and where we should be. So purpose, selflessness, and happiness live very comfortably together in this little cloud above all of us.
That's great. I love that. So you mentioned about the fighter pilot mindset. What is that, and how do you apply that to leadership?
I think the simplest way to describe the fighter pilot mindset is it's always forward. It's always forward momentum because we are trained to operate at speed in complex environments where you have to make decisions quickly, and there's a substantial consequence for your actions. So to do that effectively, we are trained in that forward bias, that always looking forward mentality. And another way to explain it is head in the clouds, feet on the ground. You've got to find this it's a really hard balance between what you're doing right now and what's about to happen in the future. And it's a mindset where no one else is sort of trained in that in life. Some people have it naturally, entrepreneurs. It's a success habit where you're able to do the things you need to do today to succeed, but also be ready to pivot and adjust to the future and innovate. So the fighter pilot mindset is a mindset that's always looking forward. And it's the next level down. It's about creating situational awareness. And situational awareness is black and white, right? So for most of us, we live in a gray world. Everything's shades of gray, as they say, and that's true. But as fighter pilots, we thought that you can't live with gray areas. You've got to be decisive and push stuff towards black and white as much as possible. So what that means is you make decisions with the information you have at hand. You make the best decision you can, even if it's two bad decisions. You try and make the least worse. I know that's bad English, but we're pilots, not English teachers. And what it's about is whenever you make a decision, you give yourself the opportunity to make another one. And we've learned that decision making is the culmination of hundreds of thousands of small decisions, not infrequent big decisions. And by doing that, every time you make a small decision, it's easy to reverse. You're not that invested in it. It's the best decision you can make at the time. But most importantly, it sets you up for the next one. So fighter pilot mindset is creating situational awareness, always moving forward, and always taking the steps to achieve the clarity for you and the people around you. So we also understand as fighter pilots that you never, ever achieve anything by yourself, and that you'll always achieve more when you do something with others.
Mm-hmm. That is great. It's almost what you just said right there. You always achieve more when you do it with others, is a concept of teamwork. How does teamwork play into the success of an organization? And what's the leader's role in ensuring that he or she has the right team to meet a business objective?
Well, first of all, I think by calling it teamwork, you make it sound like it's something that's not fun, right? Like it's teamwork. And so I always feel like there's this connotation when it comes to teams that everyone's like, oh, this is hard. Got to do it. It's not going to be easy. Everything about it is difficult because other people, other personalities. Whereas as fighter pilots, because we always operate as a team in the air, and we can't talk to each other much because they're over there, and you can only talk one at a time on the radio, so you can't have these big discussions. So we just use the word team, teams of teams. It's not work. It's fundamental to our survival. So you're taught that right from the get-go, and everyone has. I don't think many people have not heard of the concept of the wingman. Right? Everyone has a wingman. Usually, you're out night clubbing or out at night, and the wingman's the one that's supporting you, so your night ends the way you want it. So we just have this concept of a wingman, and we just keep adding wingmen. And with us, we talk about mutual support. So when you operate as two fighter pilots and your wingman, you're swapping the lead. It's not just someone following you around. And it goes back to creating that situational awareness and decision making. Sometimes the pilot's busy on the tools, flying and fighting the jet, and the other pilot has more awareness, so they can flip flop. Just like sometimes you're working in your business and you lose sight of the bigger picture. It's good to have somebody And I say in every business, you need a right hand person. You need someone that knows exactly what you're doing as a leader and can step in and help. So you have this ability to work in the business, then on the business, then jump back in, and both of you can just do this exercise where you get high proficiency on the tools, but you also get someone looking at all the interconnecting pieces. Super powerful. And life's like that as well. That's why it's great to have a confidant, someone that's not invested in your life outcomes, but is invested in you. And you can get that independent viewpoint. And the great thing about purpose is you create wingmen that are aligned to this sense of purpose. You increase the depth of support around you, and that support's really important, not only to push you forward and encourage you, but to bring you back as well. Because one of the challenges about purposeful people is they often set lofty goals that are really hard to achieve in the timeframes that they want. So it's always this tension between what we can do and where we need to be. And we create this performance gap. So a high performing team that sits behind you, they enable you to find that balance. And as a leader of a team, I think the most important mentality to bring to that table is that service-based attitude. You are there to serve your team, and when you come into it that way, that team will do absolutely anything for you. If they know you're in it for them, you've got for life.
That's beautiful. So you mentioned about the wingman, and how do you identify who should be your wingman? What are some of the characteristics or values that you look for?
It's interesting in the Air Force, and this is where I think some of the stuff that I talk about translates into business, because it's never you never learn this. Whereas we learn it as a fundamental strategy to execution piece, a wingman. So when we get into a squadron after all of our training and we go to fly and fight missions, we know that our wingman has a basic level of capability, and we rank our wingmen in terms of capability. No one gets paid more or less. You are just a more capable wingman or not. That's based on your training and capability. And we keep tabs on that as all the way through our careers. So when we go into a mission, we know the caliber of the person that we're with, and that there's a baseline. So there's never a question about what this person knows or doesn't know. So if you put it in the context of business, you might have someone come into your business that's highly talented but low in experience. So as a leader, I'm sitting there saying, okay, well, I know what I need to focus on when I'm executing this objective with this new team member. I need to bring the experience layer to it, because that's what I've got. And there's a good chance that this new person to the team is across more of the detail around what our practice is, what it is we do. So between us, we're going to build this mentoring cycle, and we're going to share our strengths, and together come out a much better team. So when it comes to the technical competency, putting a proposal together, I might just hand that over to the new person on the team, and I might fulfill the role of red teaming or just keeping it on the rails, just to see what magic that this new person can deliver. And we learn this actually not just as fighter pilots, but in aviation. We have this concept of crew resource management, and I like to think of that in the civilian world as team resource management. And it teaches you to understand your strengths and weaknesses as a team. And that one of the challenges when you're a leader and you're up in an organization is that you become kind of dogmatic in the way that you think. You've got a very specific idea, and you tend to tell everyone what to do and create plans by yourself. Whereas in aviation, we used to do that and crashed a lot of airplanes. So we had to be taught, particularly as senior pilots and senior leaders, when there's a problem, just sit on your hands, or we need to achieve something, do it slowly, sit on your hands, collaborate with the team, dissect the problem, make decisions, and really as the leader, what your job is to make the decision, not to do the work. And leadership gets lost in this. Leaders don't like making decisions, so they go and get lost in the work instead and say, here's all the work, I'm going to push it up to my next boss so they can make the decision. And that's a dysfunctional team. So when we look at what is effective about a team, and it's dynamic, is the ability to understand where everyone sits in the spectrum of the team, and to have those honest conversations and go, hey, look, I think that you're an incredibly dynamic, young, talented individual. What I want you to do is I want you to pull it together. I want you to own the structure of what we're going to do here. I'm going to sit back and red team it for you. I'm not going to be critical, but what I'm going to do is give you the benefit of my experience, and we'll work together and pull it together like that. What do you think? And just having that contract, what do you think, diffuses so many conversations and so many interactions from that day forward, because we've set up the intent. My intent is to support you, to allow you to be technically competent, but I got you back. And that's a key. We're taught that as fighter pilots, that how we work together as a team, what it means when we say the words handing over, which means I'm going to hand over the lead of our outcome to you right now. But if I say taking over, I'm going to take it too. I'm going to take it. It's got nothing to do with what your capability is. It just means we're going to swap roles, and I'm going to get more involved on the tools. You're going to sit back, or you're going to be on the tools. So these formalized dynamics stop people from stepping on toes. It completely removes the subjectivity out of the conversations with the team. Everything becomes outcome and objective focus, and everyone understands that when these words and phrases are used, it's all there for the benefit of everyone.
Yeah, it's I obviously have worked with great leaders, and I've also worked with bad leaders. And the ones that I know that are great leaders are the ones that are servant leaders. They are there for the team, and they watch out for the team. It's not about them, it's about the team and the organization. And so, to your point about being of service to others, is that effective leaders are the ones that actually care about their
Absolutely.
team and their teams to succeed.
And you're taught that in the military. I mean, I don't think there's anywhere else where you really spend that much time being taught how to lead. From the day you join as an officer, you are always taught to lead. And for some reason, the civilian sector, I've worked in two worlds, and the civilian world finds it quite threatening, and they find military people that are kind of hard to work with. And I get that in some respects, where military people have a natural decision making and leadership trait. It's let down in the civilian world, because in civilian world you don't have orders. In the military you do, right? So that it and orders exist because sometimes you got to make really bad decisions, or not bad. You got to make good decisions, but the outcomes aren't great because there just are no great outcomes. So for a military person transitioning, you've got to be a little bit more collaborative, slow down a little bit, but your ability to make decisions is very strong. In the civilian world, it's the opposite: highly collaborative, lots of care and well-being, but very slow decision making. So some magic happens when those two worlds come together, and you're able to bring a structure of leadership into a very collaborative and highly intelligent environment. And if you can unlock that, that's where you see some incredibly powerful organizations. And if you only have to look at some of the biggest organizations in the world, and they've managed to strike this balance between veterans and a civilian framework to get things done.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So what would you say are some of those organizations, or are you more focused on teams within organizations that are doing this type of, that are
every effective organization has incredible teams of teams. I mean, we've got this whole agile management methodology that was everyone thinks is pioneered by Spotify, and Spotify did a great job in how they ran their business. They had squads, tribes, chapters, all these different terms that had never been used before to describe how people work together, and they came up with this. They worked within this agile Scrum environment. Now, not many people know Agile was co-developed by a fighter pilot, John Sutherland, and the methodology is based on the fighter pilot methodology called the OODA loop, which is orientate. So have a look at the world. Is observe, or look at the world, look what's going on, orientate, position yourself to take advantage of that, make your decision, act, see what happens, and do it again. So the OODA loop is this circle that's created for DevOps, where the user asks something, we have a go at developing it, we launch it out, see what they think, the user changes their mind, and we adapt, and we keep doing these sprints. That's fighter pilot mindset. Sprint, 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 doing supercharged activity all around the most important thing, making that decision to see what happens and then make more decisions. So within organizations, and that's why the digital world is so far ahead of these legacy environments, is because they do have that agile mindset. And they have it because they have to, because of the speed in which things happen. So this is the biggest challenge for legacy organizations, and why the average age of a business has gone from 40 years to 15, is the ability to adapt into that disruptive environment and build that execution mindset, or what I call the fighter pilot mindset.
That's beautiful. Thanks. That's an amazing description. Thank you for sharing. What inspires you to do the work you're doing today?
I'm getting older now, mate. So I find inspiration. I feel like inspiration's for young people. My job now is to try and be an inspiration. And to be an inspiration, I have to try and live my most selfless self. and at the same time continue to, survive and earn an income. So one of the challenges, you have service, but then you have to be commercial as well. So you find this balance between being commercially viable in your service,
Mm.
or being completely service orientated, and joining a monastery or something. But I think you have to be pragmatic, and in this world, you have to be able to earn an income, and everyone does. We whether we like it or not, we live in an environment that's governed by money. So for me now, the most important thing is to create mindsets in people that allow them to do everything they want to do with velocity. And then through that, that's where my inspiration comes from, because I see people who think a little bit differently and achieve some incredible stuff. And then they call you or send you an email and you're like, wow, that's really cool. Like, thanks to the work that I did with this person, they're now setting up a new business, grown their business significantly, pivoted out of a role, got a promotion. So I know this methodology works because I've seen it in action for 6 years. So that's really what it is. Continuing my journey, learning more about myself, and continually adapting to the world that is now more disruptive than ever before.
Yeah, I feel like adaptability and resilience, especially in business, is key to success.
Yeah,
And
it's a good
especially,
it's a good point you raise about resilience as well. I think people think resilience means you just got to sit and grind it out all the time. Um, the world is yin and yang, right? So there's goods and bads. And I like to say nothing's ever as good or as bad as it seems. Resilience is the bit that gets you through the tough times. And on the back of that, there's a good time. Resilience isn't your entire life being shit. And that's what is super important, I think, for people, is to understand you invest in resilience, the payback is happiness, because that's just the ebb and flow of life. I mean, there's just so much goes on that everything is in constant flux and change. And you can't be Mr. or Mrs. Floppy and just go with the flow all the time and be completely useless. You've still got to try and get cut through in that environment and create good experiences and journey for people and yourself and your family. You've still got to put kids through school. We're just each generation's just a blip on the radar of the millennial cycle of life and everything else. So I think resilience has to be viewed in the context of resilience equals happiness, and on the backside of happiness is going to be a bit more resilience, because there's going to be stuff happens that isn't great. So again, through training, I think military teaches you that, because you have to. It just we don't really use those words. You just have to go through a cycle where you learn that. They deliberately put you in difficult situations and deliberately lift you up and put you back in, and until you get used to it, up and down, and then as you come out into life, you just ride those waves. And one of the challenges I see is people, they don't demonstrate the resilience. They live within the fear bubble and they don't make decisions. So you never get the happiness. You don't get the deep depths of unhappiness either. And being an entrepreneur, I'll tell you what, that those peaks and troughs are pretty high. But that's a choice. You choose grey or you choose black and white. You choose the roller coaster, and that biting down into resilience, taking a risk, leaving a job, not earning money. I mean, I've not earned a salary for 15 years. I've had to survive and generate every cent I've earned for 15 years since I left the military, and you can do it. It's tough, but you can do it, and it's very rewarding if you do that. So, yeah, I just wanted to touch on on resilience there, because I think people use it a lot, but they don't understand the context, and it's always like a negative when you hear the word resilience. It's actually a positive.
yeah, thanks for you sharing your point of view there. I appreciate that perspective for sure. Um, what are some of the top 3 success habits that you have that you can share with us? Knowing that you're an entrepreneur, you worked with leaders and have coached them. Could you share with us some of those?
Look, without doubt, the best habit to have to be successful is the ability to think and speak simple. I think what is a huge challenge is people getting clarity, and this is where the purpose bit comes into it. successful people have one big thing they want to achieve, right? They just have a big thing, and it's changing for them, and it's changing for the people around them. It might be a product, it might be charitable outreach, it might be a financial target, it might be complete financial independence. But there's something that makes you work 70 hours, that makes you feel like you could work 70 hours a week. So the biggest habit is that. Now, all the other habits of success, and I think I have ADHD, I don't really do. I'm not great at exercising. I'm good at my diet. I manage my diet a lot better now. I don't make the bed in the morning. Luckily, my partner does. She's amazing. And I've never really lived that structured discipline life. I do a little bit more now. So, I think those sort of success habits, whilst I think important for some people, they're not so much for me. So that one thing is very important. The next habit to have is to always ask, always test and ask. Any idea you have, anything you're about to invest substantial time in, give someone a ring. Hey, I'm thinking this. I don't want you to pump up my tires here. What do you think? And the best way to red team or find out whether your idea is a good idea is to ask someone, would you pay for it? If I'm going to do this, I want you to be the first person to buy it. Would you spend 200 grand? Sorry, would you spend $200? Would you spend $1,000? And if their response is, yeah, you're on a good idea, that's the thing that makes a successful idea a good one, is when you say it to someone and ask them, would they pay money? And they would, that's a good idea. If they're umming and ahhing and people would pay for it because it just jumps out of them like, yeah, I'd pay for that. They don't even think about it. So that's the second habit, is ask questions and test your ideas all the time. And I've had thousands of ideas, and some I've pushed through and lost a lot of money on as well. And sometimes even that test isn't the right test. Some people say, yeah, but the world changes or something happens. For me, it was buying a paper magazine during the mass digital content migration that happened this millennium, and we managed to survive. It was hard. So have one thing, test your idea. And the third habit is never, ever, ever give up. Stay with it until it's absolutely dead. That for me is the only thing I've really ever been good at, is not quitting, I think. And just finding these reserves inside me as it gets closer and closer to the point where I'm not hacking it. Something just happens. Something comes out of you, like this inner animal, or these neural pathways get formed. You find this extra strength, and something happens. And I've been thinking about how to describe it. And I think maybe the best way to describe it is like the rock climbers who free climb without ropes. There's just something when you know that there's this enormous consequence and you're so invested in your survival that this incredible part of you just comes out. And I think for me, it's learning to have the courage to stare down fear, and stick with what you've got. If it's trending upwards, but you're having if it's constantly going down, that's not giving up. That's stopping. That's intentionally saying no, because this is a dumb idea. Not quitting is a good idea. That's suffering external adversity, or you've had something that's happened in your family and you've had to spend money that you weren't expecting, and you feel like, I want to go jump back into a job right now because this I'm worried that it's not going to work. It's irrational. The evidence says it's working. I feel like it's not. That's when you don't quit.
Yeah.
For me, it was rowing. It was. I knew I was in the bottom bracket because I was a little dude. I wasn't big. I wasn't natural. I had to work at it, but I could see my times and everything slowly trending upwards. So the trend was good, but I would lose faith in myself and I go, this is hard work. This is tough. I don't have the natural abilities. Maybe I'll just quit. No. Just keep inching it, man. Inch it. And then boom, it happens.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing those habits. And I am, proponent for never giving up. As long as we're still breathing on this earth, we need to keep going.
And that's the one thing you've got control over. That's the one thing. Like all the stuff that's making you feel like quit, you got no control over that. You can own the decision, and that's fighter pilot mindset. The decision is yours. Get your situational awareness, keep going forward, and don't quit.
Right. That's awesome. I love that. Unfortunately, we are above that time. What advice would you give my listeners as it relates to purpose and meaning?
If you don't have purpose, try everything. Just keep doing stuff. Go out, go karting, paintballing, jump, go do some abseiling, get outdoors, get online, book into courses, dance, whatever you want to do. Just keep doing things, and the universe will something will ping inside you. Go work down, help at a shelter. Go and next time you walk past someone who's homeless, sit down next to them. Don't give them money, buy them a meal. Just do something to break the mold that you're in right now, and you will feel something. And when you feel it, that's when you feel good, when you're doing something that feels like work, that's purpose. Feeling good because you're drinking and sitting half naked by the pool, that's not purpose. That's fun. That's just letting off steam. So for me, that is key. Get out there, get outside the box, do things that make you feel uncomfortable. If you feel uncomfortable and there's no good feeling with it, don't keep doing that. If it feels uncomfortable, but you feel good about it anyway, that's starting to feel like purpose.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. You have such a keen insight into purpose, and definitely it shows through your experiences, either through your professional or personal life. And thank you so much for being with us today to share a bit of wisdom. I appreciate that. If people wanted to connect with you through this podcast, where can they find you?
They just reach out either to christianboucousis.com. Better put that in the show notes because no one knows how to pronounce that or spell it. Or afterburner.com.au. Or just you can just Google Boo Fighter Pilot and you'll find it, or LinkedIn. I'm most active on LinkedIn. I believe that that's the social side of business, and people in LinkedIn tend to have a forward-leaning bias. I don't hang too much in the Facebook, Instagram world. For me, that's the world. That's the world of wasting time and being on the TV. So if you want to find me and have a chat, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to say g'day.
Amazing, amazing. Well, folks, there you have it. If you want to connect to Christian Boucousis, you know where to find him. Christian, thank you again for your time. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Kong. I enjoyed. Thanks for having this podcast. You're doing some really important stuff.
Yeah, my pleasure. Take care.
You too, mate.